Welcome to Crystal Cave. My name is Joel Despain. I'm the cave specialist for Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. And what I do is conduct research and manage the nearly 300 caves that we know of here in Sequoia and Kings Canyon. And that includes this beautiful cave, Crystal Cave. Crystal Cave is our tour cave, our show cave, where we have lights and a paved trail so that anybody can come in and see the wonders of Sierran Caves. Crystal Cave was named by Walter Fry, the first civilian park superintendent, way back in 1918. He named it that, we believe, because of the sparkling crystal faces you see inside the cave. These are crystals of the mineral calcite. They're deposited by the dripping water, so the stalactites, the stalagmites, the floatstone, the rimstone, all those things sometimes have nice little sparkles that really liven up your experience inside the cave. Crystal Cave and the other caves up here in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the national parks are formed in marble. Marble is a close relative of limestone, which is the rock that's usually associated with caves. These rocks are ancient deposits from the ocean. They're very rich in calcium carbonate, somewhat like your bones, a lot like shells. And this rock can literally be dissolved, just like you would dissolve maybe a bit of salt or sugar in a glass of water. Over time, water moving underground through these areas of marble rock carve out and dissolve and make the passageways and rooms that we're going to see today. And that same stream that made the cave is still flowing through here today, carving out more rooms and passages. It's an ongoing process. Caves are made by water, groundwater, and all of the caves in the park are natural aquifers, meaning that they store water, they retain water, and they cool down water. They make it nice and cold. And that water returns to the surface all over the parks as springs. There are dozens of springs in the parks that supply water primarily to the Kaweah River all through the year, including late in the summer when the flow of water is very low. The springs and the streams from park caves keep those rivers flowing during the dry season, and that helps provide water for a lot of uses on further down the river, such as for agricultural, domestic use, industrial use, the use of people in different towns. A lot of the water that you see coming down park rivers late in the summer originated in the cave. A lot of things, surprisingly, do live inside of the cave. We've got some obvious things. There's bats inside Crystal Cave. Typically not a whole lot of them, but we do have a diversity of different species. There's lots of different kinds that make their home in the cave. We get other mammals too. Things like black bears will den and nest in park caves during the winter months. Ring-tailed cats seem to like the caves. These are sort of raccoon-like animals that live in the foothills of the park. And then we also get things like salamanders, frogs, amphibians that like cool, moist places. But really what's most unusual about the cave life in the caves in the parks and here at Crystal Cave are the invertebrates. Now I say invertebrates, I mean things like centipedes, crickets, spiders, millipedes, bugs, and all their relatives. Inside park caves, there actually are a lot of these that have lived in the cave for many, many generations and evolved and adapted to become new species that are actually unique or endemic to the parks. There are small animals that live inside Crystal Cave that live nowhere else in the world. And that's true for a lot of the park caves. And that certainly makes for some very special and unique animals. The animals that are adapted to the cave environment, these little bug-like guys, they're often really different than their surface counterparts, their surface relatives. Oftentimes they have no eyes. You don't need eyes in the cave because it's completely dark. Oftentimes they have no pigment. Pigment is irrelevant in the cave because it is also, again, completely dark. So they often appear very white and kind of ghostly looking. Also, these animals tend to have elongated appendages and antennae and arms and legs. And that's so they can crawl around in the dark in the spaces inside the cave passageways. So there's a lot of things that make these animals different and that make them distinctive. But overall, most of them are pretty small. Inside the park caves, we actually have entire little ecosystems. Now, food on planet Earth for essentially everything, not quite, but almost, originates from the sun. There's no sun inside the cave, so the food and the energy available for animals inside the cave is imported. What imports food? Bats do. Bats will eat outside at night, and then they make guano piles during the day while they're roosting in the cave, and that can be a food source. The streams will wash in organic matter, sticks, leaves, twigs, things like that animals can eat. Also, pack rats and rodents will bring stuff in. The ring-tailed cats, bear nests provide a lot of organic matter. And then you have a group of animals that eats this organic matter. These are usually called detritivores, things like the millipedes and the springtails. And then you have animals that eat those, predators, spiders, pseudoscorpions, things like that. And so it's a small little food chain, but we do have them inside the cave, these things that eat other things that eat each other, and so on. Up here in the national park, Sequoia and Kings Canyon, we do know of almost 300 park caves. Most of these are small. Most of them are on the Cahuilla watershed on the western side of the parks. But we do have the longest cave in California here, almost 22 miles long, called Lilburn Cave. It also has beautiful marble banding. Crystal Cave here is the second longest cave in the parks with about 3 miles of passageway. Other long caves include Hurricane Craw, which has beautiful cave formations, Soldier's Cave, which is a really popular cave with recreational cavers, and White Chief Caves and other caves in alpine areas where the marble bedrock is exposed everywhere and the caves are pretty much just rock and sand and water. No cave formations because they flood every year. So we have caves across a range of elevations, a range of different locations. Some are very wet, some are very dry, some are pretty warm, most are fairly cool, and some are quite cold. Caves are used extensively for research for a variety of different topics and subject matter, and that definitely includes Crystal Cave. Just last fall, there were actually 3 small stalagmites. That's the cave formation that grows up from below off the floor that were removed from the cave. And they were removed to look at climate. Now, it seems kind of odd to think about climate in a cave formation, but these cave formations have been growing for tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. And during that time, they've trapped gases inside of them as they have grown. Those gases that were trapped 100,000 years ago can tell us about the climate 100,000 years ago. So researchers from UC Irvine, Oregon State University, and other institutions are coming to caves in the park to look for stalagmites to try to understand past climate, and also hopefully that will help us understand more future climate and current climate. Another area of research we're doing in park caves is just simply the research on the climate in caves themselves. Generally, caves have a very steady climate, meaning that the temperature doesn't change very much, the humidity doesn't change very much, and of course our cave animals have adapted to that very steady climate. But with the climate outside here in the mountains changing, we can expect to see those sorts of changes happening in park caves also. So right now we have a research project out where we're monitoring temperature and humidity levels in more than a dozen locations in different park caves to see how the climate is changing in those caves, to see how fast it's changing, to see where it's changing, and hopefully understand better why it's changing in park caves and what the effects may be upon our park animals. Crystal Cave, our commercial cave, here where we're standing in the entrance, is managed by the Sequoia Natural History Association. That's a nonprofit group, a partner of the national parks, and those folks give tours here all summer long, 7 days a week, usually from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And so it is a great place to beat the heat on a hot summer's day, a real nice opportunity to get out and see a pretty part of the mountains. We've got some nice waterfalls on the walk to the cave, pretty formations inside the cave. It's a great family outing.